everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my August reading wrap up. We're gonna have to go through this one a little bit more rapid fire today because two reasons. One, I gotta leave for my teaching job in a little bit, and two, I'm filming on my phone today because my camera's been giving me grief with all the ringing in the background of my recent videos, so I do apologize for that, but hopefully my phone will be able to handle this. So we're gonna dive into all these lovely books that I read in the month of August. This month I have read, I believe, 11 books, and I'm hopefully going to be finishing a 12th tonight because it's currently August 31st and I do have enough time to get through one more book. We shall see though. This month has been a little bit of an, all over the place kind of a month. We've had a 2.5 star and we've had a DNF and we've had a 5 star, which was actually a reread, so like, does it really count? Yes. Mostly I read in the adult fantasy and the adult sci-fi genres this month because this month has been my like space month, so I will be talking about those books as well. But yes, 5 adult fantasy, 4 adult sci-fi, 1 middle grade, 1 mystery book. That's kind of the vibe from today's plans here. And again, we have yet to find a actual 5 star for the second month in a row, besides, of course, the reread of Priory of the Orange Tree, but we're gonna get there. Okay, let's start with the first one. The first one I read this month was The Marlow Murder Club by Robert Thorogood. This was my friend's book club pick for the month, and it was really fun. Cute little mystery, a little bit cheesy and insane at times, but like, what else do you want from a fun little mystery where the main character is a 77-year-old woman who goes about with her special cape on her bike in an English little town? Like, what else could you want? But yes, it's about Judith Potts, who's a 77-year-old woman who befriends a couple women, a couple like middle-aged women in different kind of vibes in their life, as these murders and these mystery things rack their tiny little town that usually never has murders, and they solve them, and it's very good, and I liked it a lot. I gave this 3.5 stars. The ending did get a little bit too cheesy for me, and there were some things that I was just like, that's a little bit of a stretch. It was still a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. All right, we're gonna talk about the majority of the space books that I read this month all right now, even though I didn't read them all next to each other. But as I did say, I am doing a space video this month, and I'm focusing on a bunch of sci-fis that I'm really enjoying. So the first one that I read was The Exiled Fleet by J.S. Dowes, not entirely sure how you say it. It is the sequel to The Last Watch, and I really liked this. I gave this 4.5 stars. It is just exceptional. This like sci-fi series is becoming one of my favorite sci-fi series of all time. The first one kind of follows this ragtag group of people who are shunted by society to the like farthest reaches of the universe to essentially protect and watch this element of the universe called the Divide. And at the beginning of that book, they notice that the Divide is actually moving closer to them, which is highly dangerous because it means it's going to collapse and basically ruin all of everything. It's going to destroy everything. They are the last team that humanity wants. They are the only team that humanity has to save everybody. And I love it. And this is like the continuation of that. And this is basically set around them trying to save everyone on their ship and get them out of that area that is being quite dangerous. So loved this. I then read another sequel. It's a sequel city this time. And that is Prime Deceptions by Valerie Valdez. It is just wonderful. This is a sequel to Chilling Effect, and it is the continuation of the story about Captain Eva Innocente and her crew aboard the Sirena Negra, and it was just so much fun. I love this crazy space antics. It's a good vibe. The first book kind of follows a little bit of like a stressful situation because the stakes are Captain Eva's sister, so we love to see it. I then read a library book, Seven Mercies, for the same video, which is another sequel. It is the sequel to Seven Devils by Elizabeth May and Laura Lamb. Seven Mercies is the conclusion. It's a duology, and it was absolutely incredible. I also gave that one 4.5 stars. Oh, I gave this one 4 stars, by the way, Prime Deceptions. But yes, 4.5 stars, absolutely loved it. This whole series, or this whole duology, is just a queer found family space heist about like space revolution and bringing down the empire and that kind of a thing. And there's this really dangerous AI being that's like infiltrated everybody's minds on like a lot of the planets. So it's very good. Everybody has so much trauma in that series, but it is also a lot of fun, and we love how queer it is and how like neurodivergent, and it has a lot of disability rep. It's fantastic, and you all should read it. Another one that I read for that same video that I'm going to be releasing in September for you guys is A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Martin. This was a very interesting, epic sci-fi. It is very entrenched in city world building and linguistics, which I think is really, really cool. The prose itself for me was a little bit thick to get through, but once I became comfortable with it, it was a lot easier to read. I also found the audiobook narrator absolutely atrocious. She sounded like a robot, but I made it through anyways. I gave this 3.5 stars because it just wasn't quite what I was expecting, and it didn't really go in places I wanted it to. There was a little bit of issues with it, but I didn't mind it at all. Like, I thought it was going to be this like genre bending situation, kind of like a Master of Jinn, where you have like the combination of fantasy and mystery in that one. This one I thought we were gonna have the combination of sci-fi and mystery. And there is a little bit of a mystery, but it's more, instead of finding out who murdered her predecessor, because it follows an ambassador who goes to this world to essentially take over from her predecessor's position, finds him dead, thinks he's been murdered, that kind of a thing. It's less of a finding out what happened to him, because y'all know kind of like from the beginning what happened to him. It's finding out what he was entrenched in. It's her trying to stop this world from going after her tiny little station, I guess you'd say, and like proclaiming war and stuff like that. So it's really political, really mixed with a lot of stuff, but yeah, I did enjoy it though. Okay, so those are most of the space books that I have been reading for that video. I am currently in the middle of another one that I will talk about at the end of the video that I hopefully will finish tonight, which will be the last book in that video as well. But continuing on with the books that I read outside of that video, I reread Priory of the Orange Tree, which I did mention, and this was a fantastic time. It wasn't originally on my TBR, if you guys saw my TBR that I put up at the beginning of the month, but this was a on the whim reread when we got that amazing cover reveal for the prequel that's coming out next year. And I'm so glad that I reread this, because it was just exceptional the second time through. I first read this in 2019 when it first came out, and I didn't remember like any of it because it is a tome and there's just so many little details that you forget after not having read something for a long time, and I don't have a good memory, but I really enjoyed this. I went through it and I annotated it fully, and it just was a great time, and I gave it 5 stars because it's one of my favorite books of all time. I then read The Bladed Faith by David Dalglish, or Dalglish? I'm not entirely sure. I had a teacher in high school with the last name Dalglish, so I usually say that, but this was an interesting read for me. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It, I don't know, was a little odd. I got a little confused at the beginning because I was reading it at the same time as another one of these books, and the vibes were too similar. So I had to stop the other book and just continue with The Bladed Faith. And I got a little bit better into it. And it's got a lot of training vibes. It's got some interesting, like, you know, this prince's kingdom has been destroyed and he's trying to take it back. So he must train to become a warrior and like this deadly assassin kind of a thing. We've kind of seen that before in fantasy, haven't we? I don't know. The whole vibe of the story felt too positive. And it wasn't that it was like a super happy, bright fantasy book. It was quite dark and there was a lot of shit going on. But what was going on was that a lot of like the missions that our people were going on, a lot of the things that were happening were all wins, one after the other. So it was just a lot of going up, and it didn't feel like there were any stakes going on because there weren't any of these big losses. There weren't any like, oh my God, we're about to die moments. It was just a lot of like, they kept winning. It didn't really give, I don't know, it just didn't feel like our main character was growing at all because they were just winning. I did really like the inclusion of the like a low-key magic systems with one of the other characters, or the other two. They're like, I want to say god touch, but that's not what they are. They're like, one of them can like commune with the gods and can become like an avatar for the gods. She's really awesome. We love Mari. And then we had a lesbian wielding himbo woman, which y'all know I love. So I really liked Stacia as well. But yeah, just overall the story didn't really quite do it for me. It didn't feel like the stakes had been racked up enough. It didn't feel like satisfying enough. I think that's what it was. It didn't really feel that satisfying. Even the end battle, I was like, well, this kid's probably gonna win because like what else would happen? And I was just, it just felt gratuitous in a way. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, 3.5 stars. I then picked up a little novella from the library as well called Spear by Nicola Griffith. And I was so excited for this one because it's a Arthurian retelling, and y'all know I love Arthurian retellings. And this one was so good. It was an easy 4.5 star for me. I loved it. The pacing was perfection. It was so beautiful. The writing was a little hard to get into, I will admit, but the audiobook was just absolutely stunning. I loved it. I tried to read it physically and I got about 10 pages in and I just was like, I need an audiobook for this because it just felt like I needed to have someone give me the rhythm of the writing a little bit so that I could fall into it, and I did. I finished it in like 2.5 hours. It was beautifully well done. It is a historical, not like an Arthur and Merlin kind of retelling storytelling. It's more focused on one of the other figures of Arthurian myth that goes by many different names. I think they're called like Geirtar in this book, Heredar or Percival or Percy. Like there's a lot of different names that he shows up in different kind of myths. But this story follows our girl, Geirtar, and how she grows up in this beautiful like cave with her mother who's trying to hide her away, how she ends up dressing up like a boy and becoming this incredible warrior and like going out into the world. It's a really interesting narrative because it deals with a little bit of gender like that, and it also is a sapphic relationship, which we love, and it was so well paced, and I really want it. I wanted it to be so much longer. But I also appreciated how tiny it was and how well paced it was for a novella. It's one of my favorite novellas I've ever read, I think, and that's incredible. All right, the next up I read was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This was a TBR jar pull for me. Actually, if you guys don't see, it's this little cup in my, it's always sitting there in my videos. I decided that one day to just like let fate decide, and it picked me a middle grade, and this one specifically. This one I tried to read last year and just couldn't get into it. I was listening to it on audio and I just wasn't feeling it, so I was like, I'm gonna put it down for now and we're gonna come back to it at some point. And I find that happens to me a lot with middle grades. Like if I force myself through them, I just don't enjoy them as much as I know I could. It happened to me before with Tristan Strong. I put that one down, and when I went back to it, I absolutely loved it. This one I enjoyed and I'm glad that I went back to it because it was a very cute little middle grade. However, there was too much going on in the world for me. This felt like the setup felt like fantasy Men in Black, which I loved, and I wish we had just stuck with that. But there was so much else happening on top of that. Like we had mages and magicians and people who could read constellations, and a moment where Amari went up on a magic carpet ride to the stars and had her constellations read by this other person. And we had the inclusion of the Van Helsings, which is a Dracula reference, and the Night Brothers, which is them, you know, alluding to vampirism in this story. And there's just so much going on in the background of it all that it just felt too much and overloaded. Like it was trying to do too many things. And the characters in here, except for Amari, were so flat. They're so two-dimensional. You really don't get a lot out of them, especially like Amari's best friend in this. She's a lovely little were-dragon, which I want her story so bad because like what the hell is a were-dragon? I want that. But she just goes along with everything Amari is doing. She doesn't really have her own goals that are like actually started and like thought out and all that kind of stuff. So it was, I don't know, she just went along with Amari and had no tension between the two of them at all, which I would have liked a lot more. Definitely would have liked a lot more. Again, I felt off about it, you know, and it just felt weird. But yeah, Mari herself and her story was quite good, and I really did like that, but I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. All right, another book that I ended up picking up this month was The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. This was definitely a great pick. I love Sarah Beth Durst, one of my favorite authors and totally underrated. Nobody talks about her, and like her books are amazing. She creates some of my favorite worlds, and this was no exception. I really enjoyed this. It focuses on a D&D-esque party 25 years after they last like defeated the greatest evil in the world. The party is completely scattered. One of them is the main character, Kriya, is trying to resurrect her dead husband who passed away in that fight. And she's been able to, for the past 25 years, resurrect him for specific periods of time. So whether that's months or days or hours even, she's been able to, but she needs a lot of human bones to be able to actually physically bring him back to life and essentially give him half of her life so that they can live out the rest of their days together. And so at the beginning of this, I thought it was gonna be a Kings of the Wild-esque book where you have this problem that one of the party members is trying to solve and gathers the rest of the party members to solve it. I thought that was what Kriya was going to do. She was going to gather all her party members and do that. I was very wrong because the resurrection happened within the first 25% of the book, 25-30% of the book, and then other stuff kept happening. And I had no idea where this was going at all. This is a very necromantic set society, so the 3 branches of magic are all different bone magics. You have like the bone makers, the bone wizards, and the bone readers. The bone makers are the ones who can create constructs out of bone. That is what Kriya is. You have the bone wizards who can create talismans out of these bones and like imbue people with powers like stealth or strength or what have you. And then you have bone readers who are like scryers and can see different things. Like there's different types of bone readers, but the main one is that you can see to the future through the bones, which is really cool. It's very good. I loved the way that Sarah Beth Durst has her characters bounce off of each other in these books. She's an expert. And this is also a fantasy standalone. So like if I haven't convinced you yet, please read it. Next book I read in the month of August is Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. This was a buddy read for me, and it was definitely one that I was intrigued by, especially because it is an indie pubbed book, and I really want to read more indie pubbed fantasy and like figure out what's out there that the traditional publishing world is missing out on, essentially. This was okay. I have talked about this book at length in many of my reading vlogs, especially my previous one. I talked about all my issues about it with the gender issue and the pacing issue in this. So in a nutshell, the women in this narrative are used as a narrative device most of the time. They are used as objects. None of them are given enough character to be anything more than like two-dimensional paper, and their only purpose is to be like plot points or grief fodder for the men in this story to move the men forward. So that really bothered me, and it didn't get any better as I read through the book. Another issue was that the pacing itself, like the plot itself, overview, fine, paced okay, pretty breakneck, that kind of a thing, but the individual scenes in this book aren't balanced very well. So a lot of like the really important moments or plot points aren't given enough weight in the story compared to the stuff that's like not as important, or like the lead up to these moments. So a lot of these really big battles that we have, or like the climactic moments, are reduced to like half a page or a page of content, and it goes by way too fast. So I had issues with that. The book overall was just fine for me, and I gave it 2.5 stars. But if you want to know more about my issues in full, I will leave that vlog tagged on the screen or down below somewhere. But it is my previous vlog that I talked about this in. Wow, okay, that's already the end. Those are all the books that I've read so far in the month of August. The one last book that I'm really hoping to finish up tonight is, funnily enough, a good namesake for the month of August, because it is August Kikko and the Mechas from Space. This is the last book that I'm going to be including in my space vlog. This is by Alex White. I am currently about 184-ish pages in. I am loving this book so much, and I'm really hoping that stays. This is essentially, August Kikko is this jazz pianist, and he, at the beginning of this book, is set up for the end of the world, as is the rest of humanity, because humanity knows that they are about to be destroyed by these epic robotic vanguard things that have destroyed many planets in the universe. At the beginning of this, August is ready for his death, essentially, but in a twist of events, he gets picked by one of these robots, or vanguards I should say, and he gets like essentially melded with them and like has a lot of body modifications go over, and his actions in that fight save the world, save humanity. And then it like kicks off this whole narrative of like the government trying to study him and this vanguard, and then him trying to get away and like save the universe. I'm at a point where him and his like counterpart named Ardent, who is a really famous pop star, who is, I don't know, just like them and August get like tied together in the moments of the end of the world. It's very interesting, and I'm really liking this. But yes, this is what I'm also hoping to finish in this month tonight. But all right, my friends, that is it. That is my August wrap up. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, and let me know what your favorite read of August was, because I would love to know. I'd love to chat about it with you down below. Anyways, my friends, I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.